Good morning. It is Thursday, May the 26th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. Today, after the daily declaration for spiritual warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have a clip of Paul Ryan and a short commentary, no free lunch, fossil fuels, and the first part of Chapter 11 of Hondo. All that and more when I get back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, Biblical Principles to Defeat the Devil for May 26th. Understand the blessing of obedience. You shall love me with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind. Cast down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against my knowledge, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of my ways. Do not obey unrighteousness, but obey my truth. Then my indignation and wrath will be far away from you. You will receive my blessings because you obey my commandments. Luke 10:27, 2 Corinthians 10:5, and Romans 2:8. Prayer declaration. God, I will obey you and will trust you with my life. I will love you by keeping your word in my heart so that I will not sin against you and risk losing your favor and blessing, for they are life and breath to me. I pray that you will have confidence in my obedience, knowing that I will do even more than you say. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, Biblical Principles to Defeat the Devil for May 26th. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded and asks why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Thank you. Who is the socialist? He is the man that is spiritual. He's the man that seeks consensus. He's subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He is informal and terminally unique. He is childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Thank you. So I'm going to play here a clip of Paul Ryan. This was from today. He was being interviewed on CNBC, and it's a little clip of the exchange between him and the interviewer.
People who just took the jobs you left. So I've just really enjoyed scaling new learning curves, doing cool things. I love teaching at Notre Dame, at AEI, working on a big entitlement reform program to show how to modernize the safety net, reform our entitlements to preserve our world reserve currency, get off the debt. That's a big project I'm working on. So a lot of cool things I get to do that I really enjoy. In our Poverty Foundation, there's some really interesting poverty-fighting, center-right ideas that are evidence-based that I think are really going to move the needle on poverty. So I'm very excited about that work. So I get to do the kind of policy things, the kind of educational things that I've really always wanted to do. But when you're in politics, and especially as speaker, you're managing the traffic flow. You're playing politics. I don't have to play politics. I can just do policy and do really cool stuff.
So you didn't want a Monday morning quarterback for 3 years.
Oh, so now you want some time. Right.
Now what? It's been 3 years. What do you think about the state of things and the job they are doing?
Well, I think. Look, Joe Biden and I have been friends for years. I think people thought they were going to get a centrist in office, a common ground guy. That's not what he was. He gave the keys to the left, to the progressives. They steered the country far left. They tried to go so far left in so many issues, and they didn't have the majorities to do that. That's what always confounded me, is they acted as if they had these massive majorities with these left-wing ideas.
That's what the Republicans did last time they were in charge, too. We've seen this play out for a
tax
while.
reform, it works. These policies work. So that's the thing I'm excited about, is we actually put a lot of good policies in place that have proven to work. I mean, who expected a global pandemic?
People say the same thing with Obamacare. They didn't have the votes from the other side of the aisle, but they think it works.
But the point I'll say is, so I think we're going to win the midterms. I feel pretty good about that. Definitely the House. The Senate's a little harder to predict. But I think we'll go back to divided government. And frankly, that would be nice to have, because people won't get scared that we're going to go so far left, or whichever way you don't want to go. I think divided government is going to be a little stabilizing for the economy, for the country. And I think the voters are going to want that.
You think you're going to get back to the point where people work across the aisle or not? Because a lot of the people who were doing that are leaving at this point.
Okay, so that was, again, the clip of Paul Ryan and the CNBC host. Now, this is one of the typical tactics that the left likes to use, is they come back and say, well, the other side says the same thing, right? So Paul Ryan comes out and says, for instance, that the left is, that he's gone hard left and nobody supports that. And she comes back and says, well, the same thing is said about Republicans. And what he did, the way he handled it, was he ignored it. He just went ahead and picked up where he left off, and that's one way of doing it, but it's the second best way. If you don't know what else to do, yes. The worst thing you can do is concede the point. If you concede the point, there's no way to win the argument. That's all there is to it. The best thing that you can do is deny it. As soon as she comes out and says, well, the other people say the same thing, you say, no, they don't. Okay, if she comes back and says, well, I've got, or yes, they do, a so-and-so said it. No, he didn't. Okay, make them prove it. Never, ever, ever take their word for it. Because that's the game she's playing. She says, well, other people did the same thing. She's saying, basically, take my word for it, that other people did the same thing, that the Republicans acted the same way as the left, or that the Republicans claim to be acting in the best interest of the majority and weren't really. Okay? She's saying, take my word for it. Never, ever, ever take their word for it. Because once you've done that, now you're going to be in a position where you're going to be stuck trying to prove a negative. Trying to prove to her why what she is saying is wrong. And it's not up to you to do so. You don't have to prove anything. When you're dealing with the left, it's the left that always has the burden of proof. So remember that again. You get somebody that says, well, the other side does the same thing. The answer always to that is no, they don't. You just flat out contradict them. Oh, well, I've got evidence. No, you don't. So contradict them, and that's the way to handle that. Thank you. There's no free lunch. Quote, sometimes the law defends plunder and participates in it. Thus, the beneficiaries are spared the shame and danger that their acts would otherwise involve. But how is this legal plunder to be identified? Quite simply, see if the law takes from the same persons what belongs to them and gives it to the other persons to whom it doesn't belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime. Then abolish that law without delay. No legal plunder. This is the principle of justice, peace, order, stability, harmony, and logic. Unquote. Frederick Bastiat. The principles of identifying and shunning plunder, crony capitalism, and corruption identified by the great Bastiat seem positively naive in today's economy. What should have been abolished in Bastiat's day by this perfectly moral standard is almost par for the course in so much of today's accepted systems. The manipulation of the tax system to punish one actor and benefit another is plunder. The use of the regulatory system to do the same is plunder. Note what is at stake here: justice, peace, order, stability. When the people believe the system and the law itself are used to benefit one favored participant over another, the very peace and harmony of social order break down. No defender of free enterprise can ever let the war against crony capitalism become a secondary concern. It is the very fight for free enterprise itself. And that was there's no free lunch. Thank you. Now, the moral case for fossil fuels, Chapter 3, the greatest energy technology of all time. Fossil fuel power, cheap, plentiful, reliable, scalable, indispensable. This is the challenge, finding a source of energy that's cheap, plentiful, reliable, and scalable. As we've seen, it's a challenge that is incredibly difficult to overcome. Power from sunlight has the problems of diluteness and intermittency, and so requires too many resources to concentrate and store in order to create an independent, scalable power source. And plants are a form of storing solar energy, but they don't scale well because of the resources needed to grow them and the amount of land available to grow them on. Well, there is good news. There's a form of solar energy, a biofuel that has none of these problems because nature has already concentrated and stored the sunlight of plants that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. Those dead plants are called fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are so called because they are, in most theories, high-energy concentrations of ancient dead plants. Our entire civilization is based on burning these dead plants, which are made up of hydrogen and carbon atoms connected by powerful chemical bonds. When you burn gasoline in your car or coal in a power plant or gas to heat your home, those bonds break apart, releasing enormous amounts of energy. They exist in solid, coal, liquid, oil, and gas, natural gas, form. If you've ever used charcoal instead of wood to grill food, you grasp the basic advantage of using ancient dead plant fuel. The charcoal can generate more heat in less space because it has been cooked. Primarily, the water has been taken out of it, producing a higher concentration of energy Burning water doesn't release much energy. Well, fossil fuels are naturally thoroughly cooked plant energy. Over millions of years, as plants pile up and are covered by more and more layers of soil, the natural forces of the earth heat them up and concentrate them into far purer forms of energy than wood or charcoal. Thus, they have the advantage of being naturally concentrated and stored. The other advantages that they have is that they exist in astonishingly large quantities. For example, the world has an estimated 3,050 years at current usage rates of total remaining recoverable reserves of coal. But there's a big challenge to using fossil fuels for energy. These quantities of coal, oil, and gas aren't lying around to be plucked. They're hidden and trapped underground, sometimes thousands and thousands of feet underground, often in forms such as being trapped in stone that are difficult to get out even if you know where they are. Fortunately for us, the fossil fuel industry is very, very good at using technology to extract these hidden, trapped, and otherwise useless materials, which no one knew about or cared about through most of human history, and turning them into the energy of life. The technical term for fossil fuels is hydrocarbons, because they are primarily made of carbon and hydrogen atoms. Also, there is some debate over whether all of them come from the plants, fossils. Some say that many or most of them come from deep in the earth, far below where any plants could end up. In either case, there are astonishing quantities of hydrocarbons. With ever-evolving technology, they give us an unparalleled source of concentrated, stored, and scalable energy. Fossil fuels come in three major forms: coal, oil, and natural gas, with different strengths and weaknesses. Coal. Coal is the world's leading fuel for electricity, producing 41% of the world's electricity in 2011, and is expected to become the leading source of energy overall. In the developing world, it has been the overwhelming choice for every country that has industrialized recently. Since the 1980s, the world has experienced record increases in coal consumption. In Brazil by 144%, in India by 425%, in China by 514%. It is no coincidence that countries with increased coal consumption also experience better lives overall. As electricity consumption increases, infant mortality rates decrease rapidly, and access to improved drinking water sources increases. The reason coal is particularly well suited for cheap electricity around the world is that it's plentiful, widely distributed, and relatively easy to extract. Coal is also relatively easy to transport. It exists in a convenient form, and unlike most mined products, which require you to separate large amounts of material from the small amount of material you want, coal requires relatively little processing. But because of its plant origins and underground locations, some of coal's carbon and hydrogen are bound to potentially significant quantities of sulfur and nitrogen. When burned, these become sulfur dioxide and various nitrogen oxides, which above certain concentrations can be harmful, requiring various filtration and dilution technologies. Coal has the highest percentage of carbon atoms of all the fossil fuels. So when burned, it emits the most carbon dioxide, whose impact we'll examine in Chapter 4. Coal has been used for transportation fuel and was a dominant form of energy for locomotives and steamships when the steam engine was still the main source of motive power. Eventually, the steam engine was supplanted by the much more versatile internal combustion engine, which has nearly eliminated coal's use as a transportation fuel in favor of oil. Because the fossil fuel's value comes from there being hydrocarbons, combinations of hydrogen and carbon, each of them can be made to have many of the properties of the others, but that transformation requires energy and resources, like any transformation, and it is not often worth it. But in the future, it might be worth it, which means that claims that we'll run out of coal are misguided, as coal and gas can effectively produce oil if needed. For example, coal can be transformed into a liquid fuel. South African energy company Sasol says it can be done for less than $80 per barrel. Coal can also be transformed into methanol, methyl alcohol, an alcohol that, like ethanol, can come from plants, but can also come from coal and gas. Methanol, like any fuel, has its own risks and byproducts, and it has only half the energy per gallon as gasoline, but it is still a potential substitute for oil fuel as markets evolve. Coal use is growing quickly and could grow even more quickly. The United States could be a major contributor. We have been called the Saudi Arabia of coal and have the potential to become a huge coal exporter, feeding cheap energy to machines around the world. The bottom line, if people are free to use it and the industry is free to produce it, coal energy will provide billions with cheap, plentiful, reliable energy for decades to come. Natural gas. Natural gas is the world leader in an essential type of electricity called peak load electricity. Just as your energy use varies during the course of the day, so the electric grid as a whole uses different amounts of electricity at various times during the day. There is a minimum amount of electricity use that will almost always be needed, called base load power. Above that, we need a technology that can quickly adjust to changes in electricity needs, such as powering a lot of air conditioners on a hot summer day so that we can be comfortable and avoid heat stroke. This is called peak load electricity, and it is natural gas's specialty. Coal, nuclear, and hydro specialize in baseload power. Natural gas electricity, which uses the same basic technology as a jet engine, is very good at scaling up and down. Natural gas is also an extremely clean burning fuel, composed almost exclusively of pure carbon and hydrogen, which makes it ideal to burn for affordable home heating. In addition, it serves as an affordable, abundant raw material for thousands of petroleum products, which we'll discuss in the next section. The disadvantage of natural gas is in its name. It's naturally a gas. Gases are harder to move long distance than liquids or solids due to their large volume. So while oil and coal can be moved relatively easily around the world, gas has long been a local market. This causes supply security issues in which one country is dependent on an unreliable country for gas supplies. The case with many European countries that depend on gas from Russia. However, new technological developments are overcoming these obstacles. One is shale energy technology, often referred to as fracking in the media and fracing in the industry. Fracking is short for hydraulic fracturing, one of the several technologies that can be used to get natural gas out of shale. This technology has attracted attention on claims that it contaminates groundwater. As we'll discuss more in Chapter 7, the controversy here, as with nuclear, is more ideological than technical. The shale energy revolution has led to a rapid increase in natural gas and oil production in the last decade and has the potential to do much more. The combination of horizontal drilling and fracking has turned previously known but economically unreachable reserves of natural gas into easily accessible and cheap natural gas. In the United States, proven reserves of natural gas have increased 46% since 2005. There are opportunities all around the world to produce shale energy, and the United States is a pioneer. There are estimated to be far more natural gas supplies in what are called methane hydrates, natural gas deposits in frozen form, which exist at the bottom of the ocean. Thus, the potential supply of natural gas could extend many centuries at least. At the same time, advances in compressing and liquefying natural gas are making it more prominent as a fuel and making it easier to transport around the world. This is the source of opportunities and controversies for LNG terminals. Gas can also be turned into a fuel oil and methanol, and it powers vehicles in compressed or liquefied form. Still, when it comes to transportation, nothing can yet compete with what is far and away the world's leading transportation fuel, oil. Oil is the most coveted fuel in the world because it is almost eerily engineered by natural processes, not just for cheapness, not just for reliability, not just for scalability, but also for another characteristic crucial to a functional civilization: portability. Oil is an ultra-concentrated form of energy, liquid energy, so it's ideal for any moving vehicle. Every portable power source needs to carry its fuel with it, which means that size and weight are of paramount consideration. Oil, in effect, has the ultimate strength-to-weight ratio. A gallon of gasoline has 31,000 calories, an amount of energy you use in 15 days. Oil can be refined into a stable, potent liquid fuels: gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Oil's dominance as the transportation fuel has gone hand in hand with the development of mobile engines. The gasoline engines in most cars, the diesel engines powering semi-trucks and global shipping, and the jet engines powering aircraft all eat oil fuel. Oil is used for the vast majority of transportation, 93% in the United States. Other technologies struggle to mimic it. Oil's value leads to continuous large investments in exploration and extraction technology, whereas oil deposits were once completely invisible to industry. Today, modern imaging, called 3D seismic imaging, can get us a far clearer idea of what's going on below the surface and how it changes over time. We can get oil out of hard rock, shale oil, in oil sands. We've created technology that acts as a ground decongestant, releasing oil from the sands that have held it in place for decades. Portability is valuable for many reasons. Personally, oil is the fuel of freedom, the fuel that liberated Americans to go where they want, when they want. Economically, oil is the fuel of trade. Our entire standard of living depends on specialization, on people doing what they do best, wherever they are, and then being able to cheaply move their products to those who most need them. The higher the price of portable power, the slower the world economy moves. In the future, it is quite possible that battery-powered vehicles will replace oil-powered vehicles for certain purposes. The limits are based on the energy concentration or energy density of the batteries. For example, the Tesla Roadster battery has an energy density that is 107 times less than gasoline, although the battery's electric motor can convert more than twice as much of the energy into usable energy as the engine in a gasoline-powered car. So in practice, the Tesla battery might be 35 times less dense. For various technical reasons, progress in battery technology is extremely slow. Electric cars have been around longer than gasoline-powered cars, and it may well be that another non-battery storage solution will win out. For now, though, oil is the greatest portable fuel the world has ever known, and we are willing to pay a premium for it per unit of energy. We sometimes pay 5 times as much for oil as for natural gas. Oil is also coveted as the world's most versatile raw material for making synthetic materials. You are probably sitting in a room with at least 50 things derived from oil, from the insulation in your wall to the carpet under your feet, to the laminate on your table, to the screen on your computer. Oil is everywhere. That is how the average American uses 2.5 gallons each day. Like coal and gas, there's an enormous future potential for oil production if the industry can keep developing better technologies. The shale energy revolution is bringing supplies some never expected, and the Earth still contains many more times more oil than we have used in the entire history of civilization. So that is part 1 of chapter 3 of The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now is Hondo by Louis L'Amour. This is chapter 11, and when we had left it, we were following, because each chapter is following a different person. You know, you have Angie Lowe and her son, which is going to be in chapter 11. We're going back to her. But in chapter 10, we were following Hondo Lane, who is leaving the fort to go find Angie, go back to her ranch, and get her and the boy out of there and bring them back to the fort. He was followed by Ed Lowe, Angie's husband, and one of Ed Lowe's friends who intend to bushwhack him and kill him. And when at that moment we left it at the moment where Ed said, "We got him. Let's move back a bit. We got him right where we want him." So now chapter 11. And in chapter 11, we're going to have, again, Angie Lowe dealing with the possibility of having to marry an Indian brave, one of Vitoro's Indian braves, because her son is now a blood brother of the Apache chief Vitoro. When Angie had collected a double handful of the tender stalks of the squaw cabbage, she put them in a basket and straightened to look at the hills. They were brown now, the grass fading under the blazing summer heat. The days had passed slowly. each filled with its quota of work, but days that found her going more and more often to look from her doorstep at the surrounding hills. Hondo had said nothing of returning, and yet within her she was sure he had intended to come back. Had she really read that intention in him, or was it only that wish was fathered to the thought? And her time was growing short. At any time, Vittore might return and say that she must choose now. Perhaps she should have gone with Hondo when he wanted to take her. She might be with him now. Yet she could not bear to leave all this place to which she had given the labor of her hands and where she had seen her father rebuild the house and lay the poles for the corral. A man might drift, but a woman must belong somewhere. If it was no more than a hovel on a hillside, a woman must have a home, and this belonged to her, to herself, and to Johnny. There had been a great battle fought. That she knew from the scalps she had seen and the cavalry horses ridden by the Apaches. They had slaughtered one and eaten it not a half a mile down the arroyo. Why the Apaches preferred horse and mule meat to good beef she did not know. But so they did, preferring mule meat to all else. Her father had told her once that the early day mountain men had liked the meat of the panther best, preferring it to the most tender venison. And they had their choice of game in a country where only Indians had hunted, and there was much game. Picking up her basket, she walked back, going a little out of her way to look at the bushes along the creek. There would be berries later in the season, maybe enough to preserve some for the winter. This year would be the first when Johnny could help, and anxious as he was to appear a man, she knew he would do more than his share. She had reached the house and was washing the cabbage stalks when she heard the rush of hoofs. At one moment the ranch was silent, and the next it was a circle of rushing horses, a half a dozen hard-riding Indians sweeping by at a dead run, picking objects from the ground, leaping on and off their horses, performing like a circus gone mad. Rifle in hand, she stopped at the door, staring in consternation at the yelling, charging Indians. Then she saw Vittore standing calmly beside the door. I thought the Apache were always silent, except during the squaw-seeking ceremony. Angie felt her heart miss a beat. For an instant, she held herself still. The what? Ceremony of seeking new squaw. Then the braves show off their skill that the squaw may choose. He took a step forward and lifted a hand. Hola! The Indians swung into a charging line and rode up, rearing their horses, then quieting them to sit waiting. You will pick one. It is not good for a small warrior to grow up without a father to teach him how to perform a man's duty. Fascinated, she stared at Vittore, and then at the Indians. Physically, they were all magnificent specimens. Two were tall, the others the barrel-chested men of medium height typical of the Apaches. All were dressed in their fanciest regalia, but at least two wore parts of uniforms taken from dead soldiers. Vittore gestured at the one on the left. This is the one they called Emiliano, very brave and has 6 horses, 2 squaws, but one is old and will soon be gone. He is a good hunter. It is never hungry where he sits. This one is Clury, 10 horses, only 1 squaw. He is turning swiftly. Angie ran into the house, her heart throbbing painfully, too frightened almost to breathe. As she fought to regain control, tears came into her eyes. She heard Vittore come into the house behind her and turned quickly to face him. Turning to Johnny, he said, "Go stand by my horse." "Yes, Vittore." When the boy had gone, the old Indian said sternly, "Small warrior is never to see tears. The Apache does not weep." Angie drew herself up. Desperation gave her strength. "Chief, you can't make me. I'm married." "Married? Oh, the white man's word for it." "You are a fool. Your man is dead." "No, I don't know he is dead. Among my people it's not so easy. I must be sure, but even if it were true, I don't know. Vittore did not seem to be listening. He gestured toward the waiting braves. "Sachito, brave warrior, many horses, does not beat squaws much, sings very loud." Desperately, she searched for an argument that might move him, some common ground. Suddenly, she believed she had it. "You don't understand. It would be against my religion. You Apaches have your own religion and live up to it. I know that. Can't you understand? Can't you see that if mine tells me Vittorio was impatient? He spoke quickly now and more sharply. He was not accustomed to arguing with women, and the warriors who waited outside were the pride of his people, not to be lightly disdained by any woman. When religion makes you act like a fool, it is a wrong religion. He hesitated, then said brusquely, Very well, I've decided. We will wait. He pointed toward the mountains. Soon will come the planting rain. If your man comes by then, good. If not, you take Apache brave. It is spoken. He walked out of the house without a backward glance, mounted his pony, and followed by the braves, rode from the basin. Angie, her heart pounding, watched them go. Again, for a little while, she was safe. After that, there would be no choice. For a few minutes, she thought of flight. Suddenly, and in the night. Then she knew the absurdity of the idea. For by daylight, they would be upon her trail, and then there would be no more waiting. And if they did not kill her out of hand, and one among them at least would do just that. She remembered the hatred in the eyes of Silva. There would be no chance to get away, for she knew what an Apache on a trail was like, and she knew nothing of hiding a trail. And with Johnny, they could not travel fast. She was not even sure exactly where the army post lay, and even there she might not find security. Who knew if there was even an army post left? Many soldiers had been killed, perhaps all of them. Yet from that moment she began to plan. There was no definite knowledge of what Hondo planned to do. She was foolish to think that he might return, and the chance that Ed might return was even smaller. She must now, as always, rely upon herself. The thing to do was to remain quiet, yet to plan and make preparations. She would need 2 horses. She would need food and ammunition. She did not know exactly where the post lay, yet she did know where the pass was, and the pass was large enough to be safe from any Indian attack. There's an army post there also, and there were rangers there. Somewhere among her father's things there was a map. She remembered seeing him make it, and if she could find it, she might be able to plan a way out. And he had taught her, while she was only a little girl, to use the stars to guide her travel. There would be a time when braves of Vittorio would be far away at battle, raiding in Mexico or elsewhere. She had learned to know those times, and often the parties went through her basin on their way out. The next time they went, she would take her horses and go at once, within the hour. That night, after Johnny was asleep, she packed the saddlebags with ammunition and filled 2 canteens. If she had to wait, she could always refill them. She prepared some jerky, placed it and some hardtack where they could be reached, and packed in an instant. Searching through her father's trunk, she found the map. It was a square of some 20 inches of hide, lines drawn and notations made in his painstaking hand. The map itself was not crude, but a small work of art. She located the ranch, then searched out a way among the buttes and canyons by which they could travel. Only one of the horses was fit to ride, so she must break the other. Fortunately, she believed, there would be time. If there was not, she could always take Johnny on the same horse. Yet she went at once to the corral and remained beside the horses until it was completely dark, talking to them and feeding them. And that is the end of part 1 of chapter 11 from Hondo by Louis L'Amour. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, and reminding you to listen to the John and Ken Show on KFI AM 640, Monday through Friday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Also, KFI needs to bring back bryan-suits and his show, The Dark Secret Place. Hashtag bring back bryan-suits. Until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.